When I was a kid, I used to stay home alone quite often. Whether it be because my parents wanted a night out or for a business trip. I had mixed feelings about staying home, growing up as a single child. The good news was I could be as loud as I wanted to be on the Xbox, or with whatever else I wanted to do. I made sure to take advantage of this every night I had to stay home alone. Popcorn and pizza all night, Mountain Dew, Call of Duty, blasting rock and roll or rap music for hours. I've had some scary experiences while staying home alone though, of which were always downplayed by my parents. Sure, I guess some of the things I might have gone through may have been exaggerated in the slightest, but the scared feelings inside were still very real, and I have a list of some unexplainable things I have gone through. The worst of them all was this story I'm about to tell you. It all started on a cold and snowy night in 2016. I live on the outskirts of Denver, Colorado, and I'm sure you know the winters here can be brutal. I remember sitting on the couch and turning on a movie. I can also vividly remember feeling rather uncomfortable after a while, like I was being watched almost. It didn't feel like I was alone. I was always told that those feelings were just anxiety and that they weren't real, so I really just had to suppress them and get over it. What else could I do anyways, realistically? I was home alone for the night, and that was the bottom line. Eventually, I would forget about my feelings of dread and anxiety, and it would all be fine. I was sitting there zoned out into the movie I was watching when I got a sudden feeling of adrenaline rush through my body. I had the urge to make sure the doors were locked for some reason. Of course, we had the front door, the back patio door, and both of the garage doors. They were all locked, but still, something felt wrong. I remember sighing as I was really just sick of the uncertainty and anxiety I had been feeling for seemingly no reason other than to make myself worry. I was sick of it, so even though I wasn't tired, I decided it was time to go to bed. Hopefully I could fall asleep. I woke up randomly after sleeping for a few hours, and I had to go to the restroom, so that's what I did real quick. I walked out of my room and down the hall a few doors and did my business. I came to the disturbing realization that I could hear someone talking outside. No clue what they were saying, but it sounded like a grown man. Instantly, I was in fight or flight mode. I ran out of the bathroom, slipped my snow boots on, and grabbed my phone and coat. I ran to the living room while calling my mom, and that's when I realized the front door was open. Wide open. I knew I locked it earlier, so I was absolutely stunned by this. I shut the door and I locked it once again. While looking out the window, my mom picked up the phone, sounding a little bit annoyed as it was probably 12 a.m. and she was half asleep. I told her someone broke into the house, and this time my parents had to believe me, or they at least had to act like they believed me. With a claim as bold as that, she told me to stay on the phone with her while my father called the police. That was when I saw footprints all across our front yard, starting and ending in multiple different positions. Likewise in the backyard. Like whoever it was had been watching me all night. To this day, I actually think my own parents don't believe me about this, because when the police showed up, there were no signs of forced entry, because somehow they picked the lock effortlessly. Whoever it was knew what they were doing. They didn't find anyone in the house, and they didn't steal anything, nor did they attack me. And we don't have security cameras, so the police left, and my parents came back early that night. They weren't happy with me, and even though they will never admit it, I'm almost positive they think I'm lying about it. They really think I walked out in the snow for 10 minutes, making all those footprints, and that I lied about it to make it more believable that someone really broke in. But they did, and to me it's a miracle that nothing else happened. I was 19 years old when this happened. I was supposed to be home alone for the weekend, and I was at first. I'm from a pretty nice city in Georgia, and I still live here in this same neighborhood and house, so I don't want to give out too much information about myself. I don't remember where my mom was at the time, but she was gone for the weekend, and so was my older sister. Time was going by fast like it usually did on a Saturday for me. Saturdays are my favorite days of the week, especially when I wasn't catching up with schoolwork and I had the house to myself. Ever since that night, though, I have had my doubts about being home alone, and I will probably think about this night every time I'm home alone for a long, long time. Fast forward close to midnight, I was watching some silly animal documentary, and I was starting to feel sleepy. Before bed, I grabbed my weed and went outside on the front porch for a quick smoke sesh with my bowl. By the time I walked back inside, I was blitzed, but I felt like something was off. In only a matter of seconds, I realized my back patio sliding glass door was wide open. My heart skipped a beat, and immediately I was in a complete panic. Someone broke in. How was this possible? How could I have forgotten to lock the door? How did I not notice? I ran to the kitchen and I grabbed a knife. Then I slowly walked to my bedroom, hoping to God that I didn't run into the intruder. I looked all around the house and there was no one in our home. I spent a half hour looking, but nothing. I legit started thinking I was going crazy and that maybe I left the door open and completely forgot about it somehow and just didn't notice it until now. I knew just how unlikely that was, but I had legit no other explanation. I had no other option but to accept the situation at hand. I couldn't call my mom at the time because my phone only had a certain amount of minutes back then, and I had used them all up. I decided to call it a night. I slept with a knife next to me in bed, and I locked my bedroom door and hoped and prayed for the best. I lied awake for hours that night until I finally had enough. I couldn't sleep, and lying there wasn't helping. If anything, it was making me feel less tired. I worked up the courage to get out of bed and smoke again. Except this time, I just opened my bedroom window and tried to push as much smoke as possible out of my room while doing so. The window I was smoking out of was on the left side of my house, but I had another window to the left of where I was sitting that faced the street and our driveway. After taking some hits and getting my nerves together, I heard a car turn on. I listened as it was unusual to hear a car start up late at night at my neighbors' houses, as they were all old and they were usually in bed early-ish, at least I would imagine. After a second, I thought something might be wrong and that I should check on it. I opened my window that faced the driveway and looked outside. There was a truck in my driveway and a person inside of it. I wasn't sure if they could see me. My heart started beating fast and I was worried I might be in some trouble. I looked closer and I saw a man in my car. My car was turned on and within a matter of seconds they were pulling out of my driveway. I ran out of my room and rushed outside to the front porch to start yelling at them, but by the time I got out there, both my car and the truck were long gone. As I made it through my living room, I also realized the TV was gone. You've got to be kidding me, I thought. Our house had just been broken into and robbed. Obviously, the main thing is that I'm safe, but I wondered for years and years, and even to this day, if they will ever come back, or if anyone else would ever try to break into our home. That night has haunted me ever since. It gave me some PTSD-like anxiety, and now that my mother doesn't live here and it's been 20 years since my parents passed, it still doesn't sit right with me. I've read things online before about hot wiring a car, and it's definitely not the easiest thing to do, but with the right tools and someone that knows how to do it, it can happen relatively quickly. They stole 2 TVs, my mom's safe that had a couple of grand in it, and a bunch of other valuable stuff from my mom's room. Still to this day, I wonder why they didn't try going into my room. They must have known I was there. Or maybe not. I have no idea. Maybe it was sheer luck. My mom always thought it was her crazy ex-boyfriend behind it all, that I never met, but it's hard to say. I'm glad they left me alone, but it's weird and confusing to think about. Some people, man. A lot of these Home Alone stories seem to be mostly younger people telling this story. but this actually happened only 3 years ago when I was 28. My wife was out of town with her parents for her uncle who had passed away, and unfortunately I couldn't come with. Bills were tight and I was the breadwinner. Basically, I couldn't afford to take time off of work. I suppose I wasn't completely alone. We do have our dog Elsa, who is a 9-year-old golden retriever, and our baby boy Dylan, who was less than a year old at the time. Other than that, I was alone. I put Dylan down for bed around 9 o'clock and hoped he'd sleep for as long as possible. I lied down shortly after with Elsa. She sleeps with my wife and I every night. I was watching an old rerun of that old show, Fear Factor, with Joe Rogan. I couldn't sleep for whatever reason, but it was a common occurrence. Call me whatever you want, but whenever my wife is away for the night, which isn't often, sometimes I have trouble sleeping. I like to know that she is safe. I'm an overthinker sometimes, but it is what it is. I took some melatonin and I was out like a light. Next thing you know, I wake up in full alert mode. Elsa is barking and the fire alarm is going off, and Dylan is crying. How could there be a fire? There has got to be a mistake. Elsa and I ran over to Dylan's room, which was thankfully only the next room down. I picked my little buddy up and went to investigate. There was an insane amount of smoke coming from the kitchen. When I walked out there was a full raging fire that I had no time to stop. I ran outside with my babies and called the police, and they luckily arrived very quickly, but it was too late at the same time. They were able to get the fire under control, of course, but not before just about everything was toast. I remember breaking down crying, wondering what was going on and what had caused this. Luckily, we managed to get out in time, truthfully. You wouldn't believe just how quick that fire spread. They eventually got to the soul of where the fire started, and I couldn't believe it. They came to the conclusion that it was set on purpose by someone. There were signs of forced entry at the garage door, and that's where the intruder started it. Whoever it was poured gasoline all over the garage and dumped it all over the house, causing it to spread like wildfire. I'll never be more thankful that we got out of that house alive, but it was truly the most traumatic thing I have ever been through in my life. Elsa and I and Dylan stayed at my parents' house for the night, along with my wife as well. She rushed back to town when I called her to let her know about everything. The worst part that still gets to me to this day is that whoever started this fire was never caught and probably never will be. My wife and I are completely stumped and have no clue who would want to do something like that to us, and that might be the worst part about it.